so you can drag and drop files in no problem. And we even showed you some validation. Now, I made this a little bit better as well as its own method in the sense that I allowed us to have multiple file types to be very specific to the file types that I want. And you can look these up online. And then this actually turns that into an array that we can just simply run this one command to make sure that we have the correct file types. Because what I had before was just image all, and that actually allows Photoshop images to be uploaded or PSD files to be uploaded, which you can test on your own. But I'm just going to show you really quick why I did it this way. So then when I come in this file drop here and we go into options and we go to all files and I click on the PSD and open it, it gives me this error, right? So whether or not it is a rejected file or a non-rejected file, that error will come through. And that was the other reason as to why I made verify file, like the actual method itself, is so I could call it anywhere, and then it'll just verify that, these parameters are correct, right? So these parameters down here. But that's actually not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to actually read one of these files using JavaScript's file reader API and then show that file. So in our case, of course, it's an image, so I can actually show it in line. I can actually show the image and see what it is that it looks like. But this verify file method, this right here, is absolutely reusable, and you can put it pretty much anywhere else as long as you have files that you're passing in as an argument. That's it. And then it will just return true or false whether or not it is a valid file according to these parameters that we set elsewhere. Cool. So now what I want to do is actually create a way that I can read the file. So what I want to get is the image base 64 data. Like, how do I actually get that base 64 data? This is an encoded data type that just is a different way to look at an image data. You've probably seen this before, and if you haven't, it's pretty cool. So what I do here is I'm going to make a constructor first and foremost, and just say constructor props super props this.state, and we want to set our default state in here. And I'm going to go ahead and say img source and put that equal to null. Just a completely empty file here. All right. So that also means that down here, in my render, I'll just do const and img source equaling to this.state. Right. And of course, I'll just go ahead and say if the image source is there, or rather if it's not equal to null, then I'll go ahead and just have my image or img source come through. Otherwise, we'll just leave it empty. Cool. So this will render out our image source, whatever that ends up being. Right, so a lot of times when you use source, you might be familiar with an external HTTP source, or even a local or relative one, but oftentimes it's related to some sort of external source. What base64 allows us to do is to just render it from that string of data. That base64 data will actually be rendered through on this source. It's pretty cool. So how do we actually turn one of these files into that data? Now, I've already handled the verifying portion of it, right? I've already verified that it is an image. So what I'm about to do should actually work. It should actually show me that. And I'm also going to do one more thing in here is I'm going to put a div tag, and I want to actually just render out what that image source stuff looks like. Okay, so got my default state here. Now I need to change whatever the file is. So I'll go ahead and do const current file equals to files 0. Because again, we're not allowing multiple files here. We're just doing one because eventually we're going to crop it too. And in here, what I want to do is manipulate whatever this current file is to make sure that I can add it to the state as a base64 image. And we do this by using const, well, I'm going to say const reader equals to a new file reader. So in the JavaScript API, we've got this file reader method, and I'm going to go ahead and do reader.add event listener for load. So once the image loads, it's going to run this method. This method, of course, is going to be using We're going to use an arrow method here, and then we'll just say false as the last part. So the arrow method, or the arrow function rather, is where we're going to actually set our state that's going to be related to this handle on drop. So whatever the state is, we want to change it to work with what's loaded in this reader. And the event listener will be triggered after we do something like this. So reader.read as data URL. And we pass in that file, so that current file. Okay, so what happens here? We drag and drop a file or click and upload a file. That file gets verified. If it's verified, then it's going to go through this method here of it's going to read it. We actually pass it into being read here, but we add the event listener first so it knows that, hey, we should be listening for the load event. Once the load event happens, then what is happening in that load event? Well, it's reading it as a data URL or a base 64 item, which we could see with the console log of reader.result. So that's the actual result that's coming from this read portion. And then we just do this .set state, and I'm going to set the state for the IMG source, and it's reader.result. Okay, again, reader is our custom constant that we named it, right? You don't have to name it reader, but that's what we did. Okay, so you could call it something else like my file item reader, right? And then change all these. Just do that because you should know that. If you don't know that, now you do. Cool. Okay, so we save that and refresh in here. I do have this console error. We'll take a look at that in a minute, but let's go ahead and drag and drop a file in here. PNG file. I'm going to load it in. Here is that string here, right? So this is what base 64 and string does. So I have done that with this read data as URL. That actually changed it. But unfortunately, I don't actually see an image in here. So what I'm going to do then is grab a screenshot image that I have to take a look. So I bring it in, and there we go. So why is it that I didn't see the image before? Well, there actually was an image there. But if we actually look at this, it is a white image, right? So it's already white. So, and it's a PNG image, so it's transparent on top of that. So just like this actually does have a white background, and it is actually there, and the image actually is showing up. So I'm not going to do it, but you could add some styles in here to make sure that we have the preview image showing up. There might be some things that you might end up doing, but the main thing here that we've successfully done is we've uploaded an image and provided a preview for it right there. So realistically, this is a way to preview a uploaded file of an image. Now, if you wanted to preview other kinds, like if you wanted to have it where it preview an image, or you would preview like you have a default image for PDF files, like assuming that it's a PDF file, you could really change this method to being, instead of being verify file, but rather verify image file, and get rid of the alerts. If it's an image, then it's going to send back true. If it's not an image, it's going to send back false. And that's essentially what you would do to make sure that we could have other files on there. In those files, you wouldn't necessarily use file reader. There are other ways to read other kinds of files, but again, that's not the focus here. If you want to see that stuff, please let me know in the comments. But we now have this way of actually rendering out the image. Now, the other thing is I did leave the condition for this being null, but what I really want is I want the drop zone to go away. So once the file's dropped, I just want the image. That's all I want to see. And then, of course, I want to eventually crop it and do all those things. But this drop file here should go away. So that's a really simple fix. And it's just by adding or removing this drop zone into the condition that we created for the IMG source. We do that. And then drop image, drop or click image, whatever. Drop/click to upload image. Drop image here, or click to upload. Either one. Or touch to upload, whatever. There we go. Cool. So we now have that